A very good morning to all. On behalf of VELAMMAL Institute of Technology, I would like to welcome all the participants for this AICTE sponsored Sttp on assessment in engineering education, the pedagogy approach. So the objective of Sttp assessment is considered as the most important role in steering the learning process. However, we cannot confine to one particular methodology as the best assessment method for a course. An assessment plan helps in selecting the right testing method and decides on the relative weight of each assessment for final result of the course. This also helps to ensure that the assessment address the intended learning outcome, which makes an assessment plan a helpful tool for examiner and an important instrument for quality assurance. An assessment matrix is designed to ensure that all the selected learning objectives are covered in the assessment, which helps to make certain that the assessment will be both valid and reliable. This is done by using different methods to set the cutoff score by using rubrics. The participant will be put forward to apply quality criteria for the construction of assessments and assessment items to improve the quality of assessments and education, which have huge impact on the future education and career of the students. So now I am give the guidelines for HTTP. Participants are solicited to attend all the sessions using Zoom app. Log into Zoom app using your registered email ID. Change your profile name with participant ID. For example, VAT-STTP not one, which was mailed by us in Excel file. Participants are requested to mute your microphone and camera during the session. All are needed to join in our WhatsApp group. Link is available in participation confirmation mail ID. As per AICTE norm, 80% attendance and minimum 60% score to be secured in all the assessment is mandatory to avail the certificate. Feedback and attendance link will be in Google form posted at the end of the every session after the question and answer session in the chat box only. Assessment in Google form will be in MCQ type, short answer type, etc. Submit the assessment through Google form only, which will be posted in WhatsApp group at the end of the day. Assessment form must be submitted before next day 9:30 a.m. after which link will be disabled. All the participants are requested to download app which are instructed by the experts during the session as a part of activity in HTTP. If you have any queries, please raise your hands in Zoom app. Our session coordinator will assist you. Participants are requested to type all your questions in chat box, which will be answered by the expert at the end of the session. Participants are requested not to post any verbal crutches. Example, good morning, good afternoon, and okay, like this in the chat box. All the recorded virtual session will be available in our YouTube channel at the end of the respective class. If any queries regarding technical issue, inform through WhatsApp. So now I am going to give the brief introduction about our chief guest. Dr. Pradeep Kumar Choudhury teaches economics at Zakir Husain Center for Educational Studies, School of Social Science, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Before joining JNU, he worked as a regular faculty at the Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, a research institute of the ICSSR, Government of India, and as a research fellow at Public Health Foundation of India and Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi. His PhD is in the area of economics of education from National University of Educational Planning and Administration, NUEPA, New Delhi. Currently, he is collaborating in a major project titled Delhi Research Implementation and Innovation, DRIIV, with the IIT Delhi, sponsored by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Recently, he completed an international collaborative study in an experimental setup with Stanford University, USA, that aims to access and improve student learning in engineering and higher education in an international comparative perspective. Also, he has completed 2 other studies sponsored by ICSSR and UGC that examined the issue of inequality in educational opportunities among marginalized youth in India and the importance of financial incentives to bridge this. His research has dealt with various aspects of applied development economics, especially issues related to education, health, and labor. Specific research interests include privatization of education and market policies, education inequalities, school choice, education and labor market, and family investment in education. He is editing a volume co-authored titled Contextualizing Educational Studies in India, Location of Research Policy and Practices, forthcoming by Routledge. His research has been published in several peer-reviewed journals like the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, Asia and Pacific Policy Studies, Economic and Political Weekly, Journals of School Choice, Quality Assurance in Education, Minimal Asia, Higher Education for the Future, and also as chaptered in edited books, reports published by Oxford University Press, Routledge and Springer. Dr. Choudhury has visited several countries to share his research work in some of the world's best universities, like University of Oxford, Paris School of Economics, University of York, University of Ottawa, National University of Singapore, Central European University, Izmir University of Economics, and the International Institute of Social Studies. One of his recent work is accepted for presentation in American Educational Research Association AERA 2021 annual meeting. Once again, warm welcome you, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
good morning to all and wish you all a happy new year 2021.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I hope we all will be safe in this year because 2020 was something different for all of us. So let us hope, pray in the with the like in front of the God that we all will be happy in this year. This is also my first talk among in front of you all in this year. So this is a special day for me. I especially thank Kalipan sir and other faculty members of the VIT for providing me this opportunity to interact. There is some background noise. I think all should mute as the organizer said. That would be better. Whenever you will have any concern, you can raise and we can respond. So that would be best, I think. So having said this, this is as I say in other sessions also, I am a person odd man out in this group because I am a social scientist. So I look at engineering from a social science perspective, not from engineering as such, because my PhD was an engineering graduates, and afterwards I am engaged continuously in this discipline, looking at the problems and issues faced by engineering graduates, engineering faculty, engineering institution, altogether engineering as a discipline. So engineering as a discipline has its special focus in the country's context, particularly in India, because if you see in the pre-independence India, engineering was being highly focused even at the pre-colonial era, and even in the post-colonial era also, engineering as a discipline was being focused. Even the first education minister, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, when he said about the growth of education in the country, he emphasized the growth of engineering institutions and growth of engineering education as a discipline of study in the country. Afterwards, several policy documents, if you see, they have also emphasized engineering as a discipline of study and the growth and the importance of what we call bringing engineering as a discipline of study to the forefront. So in that context, my lecture today or my talk today will focus engineering as a discipline of study and also will focus particularly on assessment and quality concerns in engineering education, which is interested or which is a what we call an important issue for all of us. And I hope I am not the person who can speak a lot on this. Rather, let this session as an interactive session with you all, because I hope that you all know better than me, because you all are in that field. You are teaching to the engineering students. I have never taught engineering students as such. I teach social science students, but I have interacted engineering students a lot, engineering faculty as a lot in my process of research. So that the kind of experience I have got from them, that I am trying to present. Also, it's secondary data, secondary information that is available in the public domain that I am going to present in front of you. If you have any concern or any point at any point of time during the course, you can ask me, or we can have a dialogue on that. That's the point I'm trying to say. Now I will share my screen. If I am not audible at any point of time, please let me know. I will cross check. So is it audible? Is it visible?
Yes, yes, Professor.
Yeah, I am going to. No, this is something different, I think. Uh, 1 minute. I am taking little time to see where my, yeah. Yeah, hope it is visible also now. The slide is visible,
Yes,
sir?
sir.
Yes,
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 sir.
Professor.
Yes. So the title I have given, assessment in engineering education, where do we fail and why? Because assessment, as in the introduction part, I think my friend told very clearly that assessment is an important exercise in the engineering education, not only in engineering education, but in the education system at large. So given that, let us focus on the engineering education in particular. So that's the concern I have raised, where we fail in this assessment procedure. That's the point I'm trying to. But though my idea is an assessment, but I will give an overall outlook on the engineering education in the country, and then I will get into the quality concerns and assessment in particular. Before getting into the engineering education or the issue that I have raised, let us start discussion with some starting point, I would say rather. If you see that there is a radical shift in the thinking on the nature and role of higher education itself, particularly in post-1990s. In the pre-1990s, this is not only in the context of India, also in the global context, this is the case. In post-1990s, because 1990 was a clear demarcation for us, because India adopted LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization policy in the country. That led to several changes in the different social sectors, including health, education, employment, and all other, almost all social and socio-economic sectors. So given that education, the pattern that the country followed in providing education to its citizens changed drastically in post-1990s. That's the point number one. I don't think I need to explain a lot, but still I will spend some time to say that why it is so. In the LPG, after acceptance of the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization policy in the country, there was a clear shifting of what you call provisioning of higher education as well as education at large towards the private sector. So what I have said in the second point is that policies that was formulated in post 1990s largely that questioned the role of the state. State in the sense government I am referring. So what I am trying to say that there the role of the state was being withdrawn drastically, and the private sector came in provisioning of education in general and higher education in particular, and that to technical education. The provisioning of technical education was largely provided by the private sector. That's the point number one that I'm saying. I'm not saying that it was not there in pre-1990s. It was there in pre-1990s, but afterwards in post-1990s, this was a common feature in the Indian education system, particularly with the new economic policies that we adopted. That led to changing role of provisioning of education, particularly by the private sector. And in the case of technical and engineering education, it is more so. That I will discuss in little later. So when the policies that was adopted in post 1990, that clearly questioned on the role of the state, and the withdrawal of the state started. When I'm saying withdrawal of the state, that means withdrawal in different forms. For example, withdrawal in the public funding of higher education. The public funding towards education was declined. Even at some case of time, the governance and regulation structure was weakened. There was a facilities, what we call subsidies, larger subsidies were given to private sector in establishing institutions. There is a political economy to the establishment of private institutions in the country, particularly technical higher education institutions. So these are some of the policy concerns that came in post 1990. In this entire exercise, I am not saying it is specific to India. I have already mentioned that in the global level also this happened, but in India it happened so sharply. Like there is an increasing presence of the private sector that is clear with to everyone. So that's the point number one I am trying to say. This is in addition to the policy that we adopted in 1990s, there was also global force. Like there are several international pressure to do such policies, like the pressure from World Bank, pressure from other organizations. They said that very clearly that you have to minimize your public, what you call, public funding, because you have to adopt the Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. FRBM Act was there, that was being adopted. That clearly says, I'm not getting into that act in detail, but I'm trying to say that act clearly said that there should be the fiscal deficit, that the government expenditure should not be very high on social sector, and education was suffered the most. The entire discourse in post 1990, what I'm trying to say is that the entire discourse in post 1990s that promoted an increase in the role of market in the provisioning of higher education. I'm saying higher education in this lecture, but I mean that education in general. I'm not getting into school education in this particular lecture, but school education also faced similar growth of the private, like increasing presence of the private sector. But I will refer to higher education in this talk. So there was these policies that came in post 1990s that led to or promoted an increase in the role of the market. What I have said, that it patronized as a market, that it patronized education or higher education or technical education in particular as a marketable commodity. Because we consider education as a global common public good, or merit good at least, or quasi public good, but in the provisioning of market system or the kind of policy that we adopted, that led to or patronize education as a marketable commodity. We all can, like any other commodity that is being purchased or sold in the market, education can also be purchased. Education can also be sold in the market. That's the kind of approach that we developed. Why it happened? There are several reasons to this, but I want to highlight one important reason to this. That is the policy altogether, the pack of policies that I just mentioned, that largely recognized the individual economic benefits of higher education, and it refused to recognize the vast magnitude of social benefits. That's the important thing that I am trying to say. What do we mean in this? This is an important point that we all should understand very clearly, that with the private sector, provisioning of private sector in higher education, the policy understood that higher education gives larger private benefits. There are two important benefits that education gives to all of us. One in literature says in this way, one is private benefit, the second one is social benefits. Private benefits means the benefits that an individual gets. If I am educated, so what benefit I am getting? For example, I am getting a job, I am enjoying the life, I am getting social prestige and several other things. That benefit is to me. So that's the kind of benefit that education gives to me. That literature says as private benefit. Social benefit, that is we call in the literature also as externalities that education gives. If I am educated, then the society is also getting something. Getting my point? So if I am educated, society is also getting benefit from me because I am educated. I produce several externalities for the society. I can give some examples. Now we emphasize on women education. Why? Because women empowerment increases with the increase in the education level of the women. So that helps in several ways. We have seen that the societies where women are highly educated, their children health condition is better, because the literature or the evidence shows that if the mother is highly educated, then that mother takes care of the baby better than if a father is educated. Similarly, we say that in a better educated society, the democracy is also strengthened. So better civilization, better democracy. If highly educated, then crime rate will decline, corruption will decline. So there are several other benefits, like health status will improve, several other benefits that we get from education. So what we call that as social benefits or externalities. So higher education gives both economic benefits or private benefits as well as social benefits. But what happened at that point of time, let's say in post 1990s, and still it is continuing, that the higher education that renders economic or private benefits, those were being highlighted more than what kind of social benefits it gives. That actually led to a more privatization of the higher education sector. Because the argument is like this: if higher education benefits you more as an individual, then automatically there will be recommendation that you as the benefit, you are getting the more benefit, so you should pay for your higher education. I think the point is clear. If you are getting your benefits, then you should pay for it. If I am getting benefit from my mobile, then why others should pay for my mobile? So I should pay for my mobile. Similarly, if I am getting the benefits that I get from my car, so I should pay for my car. If I am getting the benefit from a house I purchase, so I should pay for my house. Similar to that line, I'm not saying exactly similar, but similar to that argument. What there was the kind of argument that was being there in the literature, that if individuals are getting so much of benefits from higher education, then let individuals pay for it to a larger extent, and government will support, but government will support minimum. That's the kind of argument that was there with the higher education system. That's the point I have said. It was largely recognized the private benefits, the individual economic benefits, but it refused to accept or refused to recognize the kind of benefits, social benefits or externalities that higher education produces. But later on, in let's say in 2010 and afterwards, in the recent literature, even social benefits are being highlighted, and there is a change in the discourse that I will come in little later. The other important thing that we see in the education system or higher education system in particular in the Indian context, that the teaching learning process in the higher education system also changed drastically, which is again due to the larger privatization or increasing presence of the private sector in higher education sector. As we consider the higher education as a marketable commodity, the other important point that came in, which is related to that, is universities or higher education institution in general was considered as knowledge factories. It's not about teaching learning, kind of teaching learning that was there in, let's say, in pre-1990s, but it was largely considered as knowledge factories, where there will be students will come out and then there will be some output in terms of skill, knowledge and all that, then they will get into the labor market and they will be benefited individually. That kind of approach, which is a narrow approach of teaching learning, that is the point I want to highlight. That narrow approach was emphasized in the literature. So which led to like investment, higher investment in higher education by the private sector, and the objective was to maximize profit. So there was investment in higher education which led to maximization of profit. So that's the kind of approach that developed. These are some of the starting points I am trying to bring, which will give an outlook of the higher education sector in the country, and later on we will get into the engineering sector in specific. Hope this point is clear to all of you. These some starting points. That's the kind of broader picture, or the broader policy framework that we are leading, even today. Let us understand, get into the engineering education in specific, because we all are, like I do research on engineering education. As I said earlier, you all are teaching and in engineering institutions. So let us focus on all the issues, prominent issues that are there with the engineering education in the country. If you see, there is an increasing role of technology in human life. I don't think in this COVID era, in this pandemic, I need to say this. We all are connected with technology. Even today, I am taking the lecture. You all are listening, or you all are interacting with each other, is largely because of the use of technology. So technology has changed the society, I would say, and it is going to do so more in the post-COVID time. So in the post, I'm not saying that it was not there. Technology was increasing. The use of technology in the society was increasing. It is rampant in today across the globe, even in the least developed countries, and it is going to be more in the post-COVID time. So given the importance of technology to the society, role of engineering is being redefined. Let me say very clearly. So the integration of technology and society, that's the two important points. So here is technology, here is society, and that integration that is happening, engineering is being, the role of engineering education is being redefined in between. That's the point I want to say. So when I'm saying that role of engineering is being redefined, let us understand how it is being redefined. The engineering education that we are imparting, let's say 10 years back, I think you know better, is not the kind of engineering education we want to impart today, because the society has changed. Even the labor market has changed drastically, because you should read one report of World Bank, 2018 report, 19 report, that is changing nature of work, changing nature of job. So changing nature of job is a report that is being published by World Bank. I recommend this for all of you to read, go through this report, which is a very interesting report on the kind of technology that is intervening with the society and the labor market. And that is leading to a different kind of teaching learning in the schools as well as in higher education institutions, and more so in technical education, because that is again closely linked with the technology. So what I'm trying to say in this, that if you read that report very clearly, Changing Nature of Job by World Bank, World Development Report 2019, you will very clearly see how the role of technology is being placed in the society, how it is being connected, and how the teaching learning that is happening in the educational institution is changing over the years. What I am trying in specific here is the role of engineering is being redefined. Nature and composition of skills that are required for an engineering graduate is going through a big change. I don't think I need to explain a lot on this, but I am trying to emphasize on this point, that the role of engineering and even engineers is being, has been and it is continue and has been changed, has been and continue to be changed. I would say that in the current context, because we are linked with the labor market differently in today's context. So what is, if that is the case, then what is happening in this context? It helps in addressing several new and emerging challenges. So this we should take as an opportunity. This we should consider as an opportunity, and that opportunity is trying to solve several emerging challenges that the society is facing. For example, we are trying to provide more equitable access to information, because information is a critical need of the society today. Information is a very critical need of the society, and equitable access to equitable information is an important concern. And through engineering and technical education, we are trying to provide equitable access to information. That is one. Second one is we are trying to get into the environmental protection through technology, even the natural resource management, artificial intelligence, and there are several other important aspects that we are trying to address. And engineering education is a core important discipline that will address such changes. That's the point I want to say. So the other important point I want to say that there is an expansion of knowledge economy. Today the economy is all about knowledge and information. So in this expansion of knowledge economy, we are always requiring specialized human capital. So when I say specialized human capital, I say about doctors, I say about engineers, I say about like managers and all that. They are little specific because they are not human capital in general. If you are going for any, let's say, school graduates and all that, they are human capital in general. But when I'm saying specialized human capital, I mean engineers, doctors, and managers who are like we require them more in the society for rapid economic growth. Because to realize the rapid economic growth that we are now progressing through knowledge economy, we need more specialized human capital. And there we see the role of engineering education very critical. The other important point that we have to see that there is a economic liberalization that I have said starting from 1990s, and there is a growth of IT industry. IT industry has what to call, there is an exponential growth of IT industry in the economy and in the society, in Indian society in specific, which is a catalyst for growth of engineering education. If you see the other important change that we see, for example, we saw there is an increasing what we call, I would say there is a massive expansion of engineering education in the country, let's say after 1990s, which was largely, the literature says, even the policy documents they mention that it is largely because of the expansion of the IT sector. The expansion of IT sector led to an expansion of engineering education, or massive expansion or massive growth of higher engineering education in the country that has changed the entire discourse of engineering education. That's the point number one. Because now the discourse on engineering education is something different that was there 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I would bring several new dimensions to the engineering education in the country. For example, why there is a declining demand of engineering education in the country. There are several states where engineering education, the seats are lying vacant for long, let's say for 3-4 years continuously. Even in some cases, engineering institutions are being closed. I would come to that point a little later. And they are being, and some of the cases in Haryana, in Uttar Pradesh, there are media reports saying that engineering colleges are being converted into schools, are converted into gymnasiums, are converted into malls, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say that engineering, the discourse on engineering education has changed. And in this particular, in the booming period, booming of engineering education, massive expansion of engineering education, that has led to separate discourse on engineering education that will come in. What happened in between that led to massive expansion of engineering education? I have brought one important issue here. There are several concerns, but I want to raise one important concern which is linked to other important issues. But that is a major issue that I found, that access to engineering education is seen as an aspiration for social mobility. I have highlighted that aspiration for social mobility. If you see the growth of engineering education in the country, where there was a high demand, let's say in early 2000, even till 2008-9, till the world economic crisis that happened, even there was a huge demand for engineering education in the country. And one important reason for this, because even the lower middle income groups, they see engineering education as an aspiration for social mobility. That they expect that if my son or daughter will get engineering education, then that will lead to better social status, better economic conditions. So that entire thing that is getting into the social mobility. So there will be a mobility in the society of higher mobility of the society of individuals. So that actually was the aspiration that was there with the with the parents, and that led to an expansion of engineering education in the country. And also the other important thing, also I think you all know better, that access to engineering education was also treated as treated to maintain social status. These all the social mobility and to increase social status and all that led to attract new waves of lower income students. Even the students from low income households, poor households, I am not saying extremely poor, but lower income households, they also tried to access engineering education, maybe through student loans and other supports. That was the kind of change that we saw. So what I am trying to say, I am trying to conclude this important discourse on changing role of engineering education, that then the new aspiration that was there, I would call that as new aspiration among parents and demand among other parents, new aspiration and also the demand. It's not about only aspiration, it was also about realized. So I call that as demand among the parents led to market-led growth of engineering education, particularly in post-1990. That you have seen, there is a higher expansion of engineering education in the country, almost highest expansion in the global level also. No, I don't think in any country that kind of expansion in engineering education has happened like India. So India saw a massive expansion of engineering education in the country, and the kind of discourse that I made here, the kind of discussion that I said, or the points I raised, that led to such massive expansion of engineering education. I hope this is clear also at this point of time. Let us understand some of the trends, emerging trends, I would say, in the growth of engineering education in the country. What are the trends that we see? One important thing that I found, there is a liberalization of technical education. The technical education in general in the country was liberalized to a larger extent. And increasing that led to an increasing presence of the private sector. Private college, if you see the data, now enroll more than 90% of the total students in engineering education. I think that is known to everyone. In some of the states, it's more than 95, 96%, like southern states. Tamil Nadu is one where your institute, like the institute that is organizing this talk or this program, there also there is a high presence of the private sector in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, in Pondicherry, Puducherry, in Kerala, and several other states. Even western states like Mumbai, there also you can see the massive expansion of private colleges, and that led to more than 90% of the total enrollment in institutions. In the recent times, there is a decline because there is a decline in the demand for private engineering colleges in the country. That I will come little later. But what I'm trying to say, the liberalization that happened in the technical education in the country, that led to an increasing presence of the private sector. And there are several issues related to that that we will discuss. The other important trend that we see, which is connected to the first point, is there is a declining public investment in higher and technical education. Some argue that the expansion of the private sector in engineering education is largely because there is also at the same time in the post-1990, there is a declining public investment in this sector. Public investment in the sense that the government's expenditure on engineering and technical education was quite low. Though there was an increase in higher education in general at some point of time, let's say in 11th five-year plan, but if you see specific to technical education, it was very less. And some argue that even like Tilak and others, they argue that this has led to the expansion of private sector. That is an important thing that we see in the engineering education in the country in post-1990s era. That led to, this is an important point, that led to declining quality. The low investment in public, the low public investment in engineering education and massive expansion of the private sector, both led to the decline in quality in engineering education. That is the kind of argument that is being put forth in the literature, that is there in the literature. And all that led to poor labor market outcomes. This is, I want to underline this point, that the declining quality, which is linked, which is clearly linked with the poor labor market outcomes, because labor market outcome of engineering education, engineers, I would say engineering graduates, is an important concern. I think the most important concern in the engineering education in the country today, that what the engineering graduates are doing, are they getting the kind of job they are supposed to get? For example, in the media, once it came that in UP, even some piano post, many engineering graduates applied. Even BTech people applied for that. In Odisha, there was a clerical post. I think the highest engineering graduates, applicants, among the applicants, highest was engineering graduates. And they also got into the job. It's not that they don't have the skill in that sense, but they got. Many also selected in that job, clerical post, who are our engineers. So there are several other instances of that. But why in general, what I'm trying to say that there is the labor market concern or engagement of engineering graduates in the labor market is a serious issue that we need to debate, which is linked with the declining quality of engineering education in the country. Oversupply of engineering institutions in the country, that I have said a bit, and I want to again underline that there is a oversupply. The literature said this is oversupply of engineering institutions in the country, and that has distorted or that has disturbed the entire ecosystem of engineering education. The kind of ecosystem that was there in the country in engineering education, that got disturbed, which largely because there is a huge supply of engineering education. Like so many engineering institutions came out, there is not enough students who can take engineering education as their profession. So that led to several distortions in the discipline itself. That I think will be better clear. We will clear that point later because I will get into those debates in my coming slides. Many private engineering colleges are being shut down. I have said that. Data I will show. Some of them are converted into supermarkets. I just said private schools, gymnasiums due to low enrollment, and that is still continuing. There is a clear what we call slow revival to that, but still it is continuing. And if you see the AICT data, in each year AICT is recommending to close several engineering colleges in the country. So I see the kind of problem I saw, like liberalization of technical education and the massive expansion of private engineering institutions, declining public investment in technical education, declining quality, which is again linked with the poor labor market outcomes, oversupply of engineering institutions in the country, and all that is leading to a crisis in engineering education. That's my point. That is my crux. That is the crux of my point. That there is a clear crisis you can see in engineering education, and which is found as a countrywide phenomenon. And this crisis, this crisis might have a regional dimension to it because maybe you can say that southern region are more prone to that crisis, but you can see that all over country this is the issue, and that crisis needs to be handled in engineering education. The point now I want to raise that all in this, who all are engaged in this engineering education system, including all of you and myself also, because being a researcher, the head of the institutions, government, private sector who are investing in engineering education, all should come together to understand this crisis. Otherwise, the taste of engineering education, I would say, the taste of engineering education is going to be lost. So given this, the crisis that we see in engineering education, which is found to be a countrywide phenomena, needs to be understood very clearly. That's why I have said it is really important to understand why an engineering degree that was quite prestigious, I would say that was highly prestigious at some point of time, is now in the death knell. That means almost died. There is a clear crisis, and that is emerging very rapid, that the crisis is growing rapidly. Why that is the case, that needs to be understood very clearly. I don't know that, I am not claiming that this is a very new point I am trying to raise, but I am trying to say that this needs rethinking. Though we know some of the reasons of the crisis, but that needs to be debated, discussed in detail. And there should be a critical debate. I would say there should be a critical debate in this, and all the stakeholders engaged in engineering education should come out and debate on this, the current crisis in engineering education. And assessment and what the focus of the today's lecture, or even the focus of this program, the assessment and quality concerns is an important point in the entire crisis, in the entire understanding of the engineering education in today's world, in the context of India. I hope this point is clear till now, the kind of framework, the kind of background I am trying to set to understand the engineering education system in the country. If you have anyone having any point I can raise, otherwise I will go ahead with some secondary information to elaborate some of my arguments that I have made. Basimji, should I go ahead, or there will be any interventions at this point of time? Yeah. Okay. Basimji, I am going ahead. Because I am not seeing the chat box actually. I don't want to see that in between because that will disturb. So if there will be direct intervention, you can do. Otherwise, yeah.
So you can process, sir. No issues.
Okay. 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 You see, some of the points I have already raised in some of my slides. Let me clarify that with the secondary information or data that is available in the public domain. You see the discipline-wise share of enrollment in higher education in India. I have given for arts, science, commerce. This is the source for All India Survey of Higher Education, AISHE, and selected educational statistics available in MHRD website. So arts, science, commerce, engineering, and all that. I am not explaining all of them, but I am trying to explain that engineering, if you see the violet line, engineering and technology, you can see that here. In engineering and technology, that was increasing rapidly, let's say till 2010-11, and afterwards it has declined drastically, the violet line. So it clearly says what I made, that there is a decline because the world economic crisis and the other such interventions that we saw in engineering education in the IT sector that led to a declining demand for engineering education. But while in medicine and some other disciplines like management and all, they are trying to increase over the years. So that's the point number one. I am saying that the discipline-wise share of enrollment in higher education has shown that, clearly shown that there is a declining demand for engineering education. If you see, it's not about decline. Who all are accessing engineering education in the country? That is an important point that also still today, though I made that, there is an aspiration of lower middle income group in accessing engineering education in the country, but I still want to say this point, that if you see the access to engineering education, whatever the engineer, like who all are accessing engineering education in the country, the latest data, 2017-18 data of NSS1, National Sample Survey, that clearly say this. You see this figure very clearly. Q1 is the poorest quintile, that is poorest households. Q2 is like the just better than poorest, then Q3, then Q4, Q5. So Q1 being the poorest and Q5 being the richest. So that's the kind of distribution. If you see that distribution very clearly, you will see that out of the total students enrolled in engineering discipline in what you call, this is one is 2000, what you call, the second one is line is that blue line, first line is 2007-8 data, and the other one is 2017-18 data. At 2 points of time I have taken, that is there. So if you see the 2017-18 data also, the latest one, close to 68%, 67.7%. I think this is visible in the figure. 67.7% of the total students enrolled in engineering education in the country today, like in 2017-18, that is the latest data available, are from richest quintile. So only 30%, 32%, yeah, 32.3% of the total enrollment are in Q4, Q3, Q1, and Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And if you see the Q1, that is the poorest quintile, that is the poorest households, only 3% are accessing engineering education even today. So there is an increase in the enrollment of engineering institutions, even from the poor households, but even that is less, only 3%. That's the point I am trying to. It has improved in the last decade, in a decade like 2007-8 and 17-18. If you see, there is an increase, but that increase is even less, only 2%. It was 1% in 2007-8, and which increased to 3% in 2017 and 18. So that is another important concern that we need to think of. Now let us see what are the kind of crisis that I have said. If you see enrollment as a share to intake in engineering education by region, I have said this by region, southern, northern, eastern, western, central, and all that the AICTE classifies. If you see all India figure, forget about region for a moment. I have given the data from 2 points of time, 2012-13 and 18-19. Data is from AICTE database. From in India, last two graphs, last two bars. In India, if you see in 2018-19 latest data, 51%, that means more than half of the total enrollment in engineering education is lying vacant. Because this is enrollment as a share to intake. That means if the intake is 100, only 51 students are taking enrollment at all India level. Other 49 students are not taking enrollment as per the intake capacity. And that is very high. If you see, that is very high in western region that consists of Mumbai and Goa and other states. If you see that 50-60% of the seats are vacant in western region. Also in southern region, if you see, it is 54%. In northwest and eastern and all, it is less than 50%. Northwest being the lowest, 39%. In 2018-19, the figure is very clear to all of you. I think there is no confusion in this. So what I'm trying to say is that the crisis is emerging like this. There is a clear
decline in the demand for engineering education, the data clearly, so the latest data clearly say that close to half of the intake is like seats in engineering education is lying vacant. If you see the distribution by vacant seats by what you call total institution and also private institution, the vacancy that the kind of seats, vacancy in the seats or the non-fulfillment of the enrollment in engineering education as per the intake is very high in private. That is the green line. Total vacant seats in thousands is, sorry, in lakhs is given in the bar. So that is clear. The other important thing I am trying to say that the share to total intake, percentage vacancies as a share to total intake is also the very high in private engineering institutions in the country. More than, you see, almost 65% of the, more than 50% of the total enrollment is lying vacant in private engineering institutions. That I have already said, and it is more so in private engineering institutions that I said. This is an interesting picture. This is an interesting picture. You can see that if you see what is the like the number that is given in the bar is in lakhs, figures in lakhs that I have said in the graph. Declining number of registration for joint entrance JEE exam in engineering education. If you see that from 2014 to 2020, if you see the number, that is declining sharply. In 2014, let's say 13 lakh engineering, sorry, students aspired for engineering education, or they sat in the JEE entrance exam, which was 8.41 lakh in April 2020. So there is a drastic decline in the demand. It shows the demand, the aspiration of engineering graduates towards engineering education, that has also declined drastically. So I want to connect the kind of data that I am trying to show here with the kind of arguments that I made in the initial slides, or some of my initial arguments. That's the reason I say there is a crisis in engineering education, and that needs to be understood very clearly. So I am not, it's not that the argument is not like that there are not students, nor the demography has declined, there are less number of intermediate science students. That's not the case. The case is, even if we are getting more and more science students pass outs, but still less and less number of students are aspiring for engineering. That's the kind of analysis that is being done in the literature. This is, you see very clearly, AICTE approved progressive closure of engineering and technology institutions in the country. Total number of closed institutions till date is 778. And if you see the year-wise, that there is a clear decline. Like in the highest is in 2016-17, 155 engineering institutions were being shut down or closed. What I say progressive closure means, sometimes it's being closed, or otherwise they are being given notice to close over the years, where they cannot enroll the new students in those engineering institutions. Rather, let that engineering institutions operate till the students have got the certificate, and after that they will be closed. So that kind of happen. So though there is a decline in the progressive closure of institutions afterwards, because there is a revival in the recent years in the engineering institutions, but still we see that there is a decline, closure of institutions in the country. That is the AICTE data that we get. These all are the kind of what you call the index, or kind of data that I show, and I relate that with the kind of crisis that we see in the engineering institution in the country. Let us understand the discipline-wise enrollment in engineering and engineering education. Because engineering education data, I have showed I have clocked the enrollment in two disciplines. One is traditional disciplines, the other one is IT related disciplines. The traditional disciplines, I mean the civil, engineering, mechanical, which were there in early stages of engineering education, but IT related means computer science, information technology, electronics and communication engineering. These I have classified into IT related courses. If you see the pattern, the IT related courses, the demand for IT, the enrollment in IT related courses, that is the red line that you can see, that was declining from 2010-11 till 2016-17, 17-18. But now there is an increase. If you see this fish shape, that there is an increase in the recent years. But in traditional disciplines, that has continuously to be increasing in this crisis time. That I think you know better the reasons. But what I guess, that the students, because of the declining demand for IT related graduates in the labor market, or IT crisis in the global level, the students try to take enroll themselves in the traditional disciplines like engineering and electrical engineering, civil engineering and mechanical engineering, which can give better perspectives for them in the later part of their life, rather than IT related courses like computer science and all. That one of the understanding of myself, given the readings that I have, I can understand that. But you can correct me if that's true or not in the later part of our discussion. That you can correct me that whether whatever we are thinking, whether in the right direction or not, because we saw that there is a declining, but in the IT courses, but there is an increasing enrollment in traditional, like the kind of courses that I just mentioned. But if it's the irony is that intake in IT related courses is higher. That is the data I say. Because what I see, the new engineering institutions that came in after 2000, particularly, they started almost IT courses. The courses on traditional disciplines like mechanical, civil, and electrical was not very much there in new engineering institutions. I don't know the reasons for that very clearly, but what I found that given the kind of demand that was there at that point of time for IT-related courses, the new engineering institutions those came out in that point of time, they thought opening of IT courses will be better, and that will generate more revenue than the opening of traditional courses. That is one reason, and the other may be traditional courses like electrical, civil, mechanical. They may need more space for laboratories and all that, but we can run IT-related courses with less space, with less equipments, kind of laboratory and all the laboratory facilities and all that. That's the kind of understanding I have from the readings. Again, you can correct me in that. So that kind of approach that I found in this entire discourse. Let us get into the original discourse, kind of original in the sense the major discourse that I am trying to put forth in this talk, that is the quality concerns in engineering education. So we understood the entire ecosystem, entire structure of engineering education, starting from a macro picture to some of the data and all that we have done till now. What I will do in later stage of time, let us understand some of the specific concerns, of engineering education in the country, and that will link with the assessment and other discourse that we are going to do. One important concept, one important issue that we see in today's engineering education is quality. I said a bit on this in my previous slides, but let us debate on that in detail. So because we all are talking about quality, even today's program that VIT is trying to organize is to improve the quality of teachers or quality of teaching faculty in the engineering institution. There are several other programs. There are a World Bank program on TQIP on technical education quality improvement program that is also running. So quality is a major issue, and why it is the other important aspect that I want to highlight here is this is also linked with the labor market concerns that I have already said. So I am linking the quality concern, and also that I am discussing the quality concerns, and I am linking that with the labor market aspects. So both I am trying to take together. The first point I want to say, the annual employability survey 2019, it is available in the web or in Aspiring Minds website, that reveals that 80% of Indian engineers are not employable. They are not employable. 80% of the Indian engineers are not employable. Even there is a report in 2005, ASCOM, that also said 25% of engineering graduates are only employable, 75% not employable. There are several other reports that clearly say that the employability of engineering graduates is being questioned. Even if they are getting 4 years of degree, but they are not employable. There is a clear distinction between employment and employability. So I want to highlight that. Where I say employability, I say that even if there are vacancies with the MNCs or even companies, they go for recruiting engineering graduates, but they find that those graduates are not employable. That means they don't have the requisite skills to be employed in the labor market. So let's say they have the vacancy of 20 graduates, but they only employ 10, and they say that the other 10 we did get because they are not employable. So that issue is an important issue, that when we say that they are not employable, they will question on the quality, the kind of skill, the kind of teaching learning that is happening in the engineering college, the kind of knowledge that is being imparted in engineering colleges to the graduates. That is an important issue. Even that is being, this issue is being highlighted in the National Education Policy 2020. They have clearly said that engineering education is becoming very, what we call, monodiscipline, like that is not monolithic in the sense that is going to be a discipline of one, like more of a technical oriented. Let it be interdisciplinary, where social scientists should also interact with the engineers, and there should be a broader perspective, or a critical thinking should come up, should be there with the engineering graduates, which is not there in the current stage, for example. So that's the kind of approach that we are trying to develop, and that may lead to a successful model in the quality improvement in engineering education in the country. But we are not sure in that. We are still experimenting, and NEP 2020 has highlighted very clearly on that, on the multidisciplinary higher education. So we are we are heading towards that goal. So that is there. But what I'm trying to say that there is no second thought on the quality concerns, the low quality concerns of engineering education that are led to low employability of engineering graduates in the country. Some of the critical questions that needs to be looked at or needs to be examined in this context are like this. Why the engineering graduates produced from the system are so poor in quality? That is an important concern for all of us. Not for me, not for you, for all of us. Why it is so? We have some reasons, but how to solve those issues and what are the other, is there any other systematic reasons? What principle, let's say, how the leadership can change this position? It's not about only the macro picture, there is a less funding and all that. Rather, I would say, as an individual, you can also, there is a scope to change. So that change should come out at the micro level, in the classroom. Because I always say that being a teacher in the classroom, we all have our own style of teaching and also our own motivation towards the students. When we enter into the classroom space is ours. And in that context, I would say when our classroom context is ours, so we can do some innovative teaching, we can do some innovation within the classroom also. That may lead to better quality engineering education. We may not change the entire ecosystem, but if we teachers will be committed highly, then there will be definitely a change in the teaching learning. That is my understanding on this issue. This is one aspect I am saying. In addition to the macro problems that we face, there needs to be public funding and laboratory facilities, physical infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I also emphasize on the teacher. So teacher, then they are the direct intervening with the students, so they can actually make some changes in the teaching learning processes that may improve the quality of engineering education. That is my point. Because once we are entering into the classroom, that space is ours, and we can handle that space carefully, by which we can make some improvement in the minds of the engineering graduates. But there are several other important concerns that we should think. Who is responsible for this? That is another. Why the engineering graduates are produced from the system as so poor, and who is responsible? We always give the responsibility to the government at some point of time. We say that, and also the private sector and all. But as an individual, let's say being a teacher, how we are also responsible for this, that needs to be thought of. Whether the expansion of engineering education is leading towards decline in the quality, that is a kind of argument that is being said, that expansion is leading to decline in quality. It's not about only engineering. We argue that even for higher education in total. Even for higher education in total, we say that our higher education is not able to maintain quality because we are expanded a lot. But that argument is very, rudimentary for me. I don't believe in that case, in my understanding, that there are economies where expansion has also led to quality. Like there is both expansion and also quality improvement that has been there in those economies. But that is not happening in our, like China is an example. China is an example where we impart not very high quality, but we impart quality, they impart quality higher education, but also there is an expansion in higher education, expansion of the higher education sector. So each expansion is a reason for declining quality. It's difficult to believe, but there that needs critical debate on debate. How it is linked with the assessment of engineering education? I am saying there is a typo error. So is it linked? So is it linked with the assessment of engineering education? That the focus of the today's lecture, as well as even the focus of the program. That is linked with the assessment of engineering education, including the curriculum and pedagogy. How the quality, imparting of quality engineering education is linked with the assessment and also the curriculum and pedagogy. There I see the role of the teachers. That we will discuss. What are the strategies adopted by the regulatory authorities, specifically the Aicte and NBA, to address this? So how Aicte and NBA are taking care of regulatory mechanism? That because we see that failure of regulation is an important concern in imparting low quality engineering education in the country. Because with the massive expansion of private sector, it's not about questioning expansion of private sector without maintaining the regulations, like without following the regulatory framework. So that is the question that I'm raising. If you are opening college and you don't have enough faculty and proper physical infrastructure and all that, that actually lead to a massive decline in the quality of engineering education in the country. I will show the data where how the kind of teachers that we are employing and all. Even in engineering institutions, there are several engineering institutions in the country who are running without laboratories. There are no lab facilities in that. They carry the students to other institutions to conduct the lab work, and then they teach in the classroom. So that the institutions are running without lab, and they carry the students to conduct the lab, practicals to some other institutions. That kind of examples are there, and those are being reported in media. Once I listened, this is an interesting thing you can see. Once I listened to one of my teacher who was giving this example, that the kind of, this is not about in engineering, I'm giving example of teacher education also, where we teach B.Ed and M.Ed courses. So in teacher education in several parts of the Haryana, Jammu Kashmir, even Andhra Pradesh and several other states, you see that some of the engineering technical teacher training institutes, when you take the admission in that, they ask the candidate that whether you are enrolling under attending category or non-attending category. So you need to understand what is that. When they ask it is attending category, that means you need to attend the classes somehow or regularly, whatever the way, and you need to pay less for that admission if you are opting for that. Those are informal arrangements. If you are saying I'm taking the course in non-attending category, that means you will never attend the class. You will never attend the class, and you will get the degree in the 2 years or whatever, the like 1 year earlier in B.Ed, now it is 2 years. You will get the degree without attending a single class, even the practicals. So for that, you have to pay a little more to the institute. That means if you have money, you are purchasing the degree, even if without attending. So those are called attending and non-attending. I don't know whether those kinds of approaches are there in the engineering education also, where it's highly technical in nature, and also you need practicals every day, almost every day in the institution. Whether that kind of thing is happening in the engineering education is a question that needs to be asked. The kind of teaching learning that is happening in engineering colleges in the country, those are critical questions that we need. And there we need the regulations. And regulation, I see that this is almost failing in the country's context. If you would not have failed, then we should not have seen so much of expansion of private engineering colleges, which do not have even lab facility. And even some of the government colleges may not have. I am not saying that. Maybe in rural areas and all that. They are also lack of infrastructure. So that kind of thing we should not do, and producing more and more engineering graduates in the country. What are the efforts made at the institutional level to improve the quality? The effort that is being, what are the efforts that is being made at the institutional level to improve the quality is an interesting question I need to debate. I think we all need to debate. It's not about only at the macro level, as I said, at the institutional level, how the principal, let's say head of the institution, is making innovative approaches or innovative strategies to improve the quality. That is a question that needs to be asked. As a teacher, what kind of innovations you are doing in the classroom that is helping the students to learn better? So it's not all about government and the management. At the principal level, at the leadership level, at the teacher level, the kind of approaches that we adopt. It's not about, I'm not referring to the strict adherence to the attendance of 24/7, all that I'm not saying. I'm saying some of the pedagogical and innovative strategies that the leadership can take or the teachers can take that can help in improving the quality of engineering education. That's the point I'm trying to say. For example, pedagogy. I'm giving an example of teaching learning processes that we do. And there I see the role of pedagogy and assessment. I want to give an interesting example in this. This is an interesting example. You can listen. I listened that in one of my courses that I attended, refresher course. This is not my original idea, but I want to share it, what Sir told me once. Once, the government of India started doing an experiment saying to create awareness among school students, school-going children, let's say primary level, about malaria. How the malaria happens and what are the problems that we face, so the reasons for malaria and all that, that was the reason. And they have made a short documentary, to show the students that how the malaria causes and what are the remedial measures and what are the problems and how you will take care of malaria. Not to that should not happen and all that. They did a very nice documentary of that, and they took that documentary to a Delhi school where they showed that in the video, in the PowerPoint, TV, like a computer that was there in the school, and they showed that very clearly. The students also enjoyed by seeing that, several students. They were very happy and all that. When the documentary ended, then the organizer asked a question to a student all the students it asked, he asked, saying that, can you say that what are the reasons for malaria and all that? Then some people, many students answered correctly that mosquito bite, and we should use mosquito net and all that to protect, and all that they said, very nice. So these organizers who went there, they found that this is a very successful model. Information is really passing to the students carefully, nicely. That's the point they made. Then they tried to take that experiment or that documentary to a school in Kalahandi in Odisha, tribal belt, where the malaria is very high. That the many people are suffering with malaria because mosquito bite is there and tribal dominated area and all that. When they showed that documentary to them, then the students enjoyed, they saw that. Then at the end, the question that was asked in Delhi children at that school, then they repeated that question, like what are the causes of malaria, how you will protect yourself and all that. Then not many of them raised hand, but one person raised his hand and said, I can answer. Then that children asked, okay, you answer. Then the answer that child gave, that there will be no malaria in our region. According to the documentary that you have showed, there will be no malaria in our region. I don't think we will get malaria. She was being surprised, because it was being surprised by the organizer, because this is all about too many people are suffering with malaria, and you are saying that there will be no malaria in our region in this according to the documentary. Why that is the case? Then he answered that the kind of mosquito you have shown, the kind of mosquito, the mosquito you have shown are not available in this region. But the organizer said, this is the mosquito that we have shown you, which is there in this region. But he told, the size of the mosquito you have shown us is very big, and this much big mosquito will never come to our region, and there will be no malaria to us. Why that happened? Because these people who showed that video, they actually zoomed the mosquito and showed in a high resolution, very big mosquito on the screen. The idea was that can be visible to the children very nicely. But how the children understood? The children understood that the size of the mosquito is so big. Actually, in the process, they should have showed that mosquito in a very small size, and slowly they have zoomed out. But they started zooming out, and then they showed the children in the end like very big mosquito in the screen. So what I'm trying to say, that this is an interesting example that I'm trying to give you how pedagogy matters in the classroom. It's not about in the school, it's also in the higher education institutions. If the teacher is not teaching the kind of content that is being given to the students nicely, then definitely there will be no teaching learning, the proper teaching learning that will happen in the classroom. This is one example I said. There will be several other examples in the teaching learning processes that we can take up. So what I'm trying to say, that clearly assessment and pedagogy, curriculum, those play a critical role in the revival of engineering education that there, and assessment plays a critical, central role, I think, in the entire process, which is the major focus of this program. That's why I thank actually this VIT for organizing a specific, a specific program on assessment, though I am not very specific to that, because I want to give that, and I want to contextualize assessment in the broader understanding of engineering education, in the entire crisis of engineering education. That was my objective at that point of time. But I understand this as a very critical debate on this, and I think this will help us in understanding the assessment of engineering education in the country. So if you see that the quality concerns that I said, I want to show you some data again. Share of duplicate faculty recruited in engineering colleges in India. There was a study with the AICT data. In some researcher in Andhra Pradesh, they did a study from the AICT data available. In engineering institutions in the country, there is something called duplicate teachers. What is that? That means in some of the engineering colleges that we see, that a teacher who is there recruited in some other engineering institution, they are again recruited as full-time faculty in other engineering institutions. That means, let's say I am Pradeep Choudhury, I am being recruited in several engineering colleges as a regular faculty. So then I will be considered as duplicate in many cases, because I am eligible to be employed as a regular faculty in one, maybe part-time in others, that may be permitted, but as full-time you need not. But what happens, the engineering institution, they recruit those people and they show in the database that they have recruited so many engineering faculty or faculty in the engineering institutions. Because there is a mandate that AICT gave mandatory, there is a mandatory disclosure you have to put in the website as AICT says, and AICT also requires a specific number of faculty in engineering institutions. To fulfill that, they recruit several engineering faculty which are already recruited in several other engineering institutions. That's the kind of situation that we are that have come up in that study particularly. In some of the states, you can see that the almost 100% institutions having duplicate faculty. Like in Odisha, for example, almost all the institutions having 1 or 2 duplicate faculty. And percentage of faculty which consist of duplicate is 41% in Odisha, almost 58% in Uttar Pradesh. That the kind of, if their entire total faculty is 100, out of that almost 58% are duplicate. You see the kind of exercise that we do in engineering institute, and we expect that our engineering graduates will be of high quality. That's the point that I want to say. I am not highlighting because these are some of the issues that you might be knowing very well, but the data said very clearly on this. If you see that we are all having a research, even NEP 2020, National Education Policy 2020, that clearly says the research orientation in engineering is very less. That already known. I don't want to reveal that very clearly, or in the sense, I don't want to elaborate that point, because research culture, I would say research ecosystem, research culture in engineering institutions is very weak. One important reason for that is lacking quality faculty, that to having PhD degrees. If you see the data, number of PhD awarded and its share to total UG, that is BTech outturn in India, you see the figure is alarming. 0.8, even less than 1% of the total students are getting UG degree like BTech are enrolling in PhD or getting PhD awarded. So PhD to UG outturn is very, very less. That means even less than 100 people are passing out UG, then less than 1 even getting to PhD. They all are getting to labor market and all that. But we know why that is the case. That needs to be analyzed critically. An important reason is they have spent a lot out of their pocket. They don't have patience to go to PhD and taking longer times. Rather, they get into the job market and earn something, because they might have done loan market, student loans and all. These are some of the reasons that is being explained in the literature, discussed in the literature. But I want to see a little beyond that, what are the reasons for this. For example, I say that there are not enough incentives. Let's say financial incentives in terms of scholarships, which will allow UG students, graduates, to get into the PhD. I think there are some incentives by the Prime Minister at some point of time, like Prime Minister Fellowship. I am not exactly getting the name, in engineering discipline, where they will get a very high amount of scholarship to pursue engineering. But that is also, I don't think that is effectively working at this point of time. There are not much discourse on that. What data says, I think you all can share better. But I saw that there is a discourse on that. There is a suggestion, and also that is working in some places. Is it again concentrated to the government institutions like IITs and NITs, or is it also the case in other institutions, private engineering institutions, that any one of you can share with me? That I will be highly happy on. I will be highly obliged, because I want to know actually what is happening in that. Why there is not many are getting into the PhD even if they have UG degrees. The data is saying this. In 2018-19, only 7,160 PhDs are being awarded. We need lakhs of PhDs for engineering. The lowest PhDs as we are getting in engineering among all the disciplines in higher education, almost lowest. So that's the kind of situation we are getting. If you see, again related to that, level-wise imbalance or distribution of enrollment in engineering education in 2018-19, if you see, among the total enrollment in engineering, undergraduate is 94.5%, postgraduate is 4.5%, the MPhil PhD in the engineering is 1.03%. So only 1.03% enrollment in engineering in MPhil PhD level. All others are in engineering. That is obvious, but still MPhil PhD is very, very less. You see the diagram very clear. Faculty vacancy. Faculty vacancy is an important concern, which is linked with the quality concerns. If you see, even in IITs, I am not saying about private engineering colleges. I said there are duplicate faculty and all issues. Even IITs, this is Karla 2019 paper. He said very clearly that all IITs, if you take total 23 IITs into together, 38% of the total seats, faculty positions are vacant. In IIT or IIM, that is IIM, Indian School of Mines, that also an IIT in Dhanbad, having 61% faculty vacancy. In IIT Dharwad, 53.8, IIT Goa, 52, IIT Bhilai 49, IIT Roorkee 46, all that you can see. The lowest being IIT Tirupati 5.4, but in several other faculty vacancy as a percentage of total sanction strength is very high. Even IITs, where that is one we call in technical education, that is the best in the country, and we enjoy the kind of leverage or the kind of praise that we get from IIT even outside, but still this is the position. And this is not only in technical. I can relate that with other higher education institutions, like in social sciences, in universities and all. In some of the universities, the vacancy is 80%. Several university departments are running without any regular faculty. Even maybe one regular faculty and all others are contractuals. You all know this kind of situation. So that is actually leading to the problem that we are facing today. And in engineering, it is more so. So why I have shown IITs? Because if you see the position of IIT at this level, then you can think of the position of other government institutions like NITs and other government colleges, as well as private engineering institutions. Where do we fail? Let us understand this. Where do we fail? Before getting into that, let me say in IIT story little better. Where do we see that we calculate the public expenditure on engineering and technical education very cleverly. The government says very cleverly in the parliament and other spaces. What it says that we are spending a lot on technical and engineering. But if you see that very critically or by category wise, if you see that the kind of spending that they do is largely on IITs, NITs, other government technical institutions. There is very less spending on, let's say, government institutions which are there in rural areas, government institutions which are there in semi-urban areas. So the public spending that the government makes, that is also very skewed towards IITs and NITs. That is a better institutions. So again, that is creating problem. I am not saying that we should not spend more on IITs and NITs. That is needed because they do teaching as well as research. But at the same time, the public funding should come to the other engineering colleges, which are government engineering colleges, to strengthen the quality. Because the data says, even you include all IITs, NITs, and other technical institutions, they even don't produce 5% of the total enrollment. They don't constitute 5% of the total enrollment. 95% comes from other engineering colleges, government college, let's say. Within government, I'm saying the distribution within government. So in that case, it's necessary to spend more on other engineering colleges, government engineering colleges, in addition to the spending that we do or the government do in the IITs and NITs. Now let us get into where do we fail. All that we explained, that the kind of crisis ecosystem, that all will get into this. I have raised some of the points. I think you can explain these better in our discussion time. We'll have half an hour after 12. I think this is ending in 12:30. So I will end in next 10 minutes. So then we'll have discussion. Transforming engineering colleges from primarily teaching institutions to teaching and research institutions. That is an important thing that we need to do where we fail. We have not done. And this is being emphasized in the NEP, National Education Policy. This is NEP, not NEPP, any typo error, NEP 2020. So NEP 2020 clearly emphasizes transferring engineering colleges from teaching institutions to the teaching and research multidisciplinary institutions. How we are going to do? How we are going to do? That is an important question that we all need to answer, that I say in the next slide a little bit more, but you also think, what are the ways out? Because we say that social science should be integrated with engineering. That's the reason humanities and social science disciplines came out in IITs and NITs. But how effectively they are working in the IITs and NITs is a question mark. And that is an important debate. That is, I think, one research should be done on integration of IITs and NITs with integration of core engineering disciplines with humanities and social science in engineering institutions like IITs and NITs. Even some of the private engineering colleges are also opening up humanities and social science department. But are they working effectively? You might have field experience, you can share with me. But what I have read from the literature and other writings, that I don't think they are working properly. Even the graduates who are opting for social science disciplines to make their course interdisciplinary, they are taking it very easily. The courses of social science disciplines like economics, literature, developmental studies, and other such courses. This is an important debate we should get in. Improving the research ecosystem in engineering colleges, specifically non-elite engineering institutions. I say non-elite and elite. When I say elite means NIT, IIT and all. Non-elite means particularly the private engineering institutions and some government engineering institutions which are there in rural and semi-urban areas. which are not focused by the government, getting very less public funding. Physical infrastructure is not there, lab facilities are very weak, and all that. So these non-elite institutions are actually dying. Lack of quality, not able to provide quality engineering education to the students. So they need to be focused in the policy, or in the even in the they need to be emphasized. The focus should be on them in provisioning of good quality engineering education to the country. How they need, is it the public funding is going to change? If the government will fund them or the private sector will be proactive on that, is it going to change the situation or something else is needed? Do we need better industry academia interlinkage? Do we need more internships among the students? Do we need a rigid or very intensive assessment procedure in that? These are some of the questions. It's not about only funding and all that, or teacher in general. Teacher is an important component that I must recognize or I must emphasize. But in addition to that, what else we can see in that context, including assessment? That's the focus. Enhance societal and industry linkage, that is weak even today. Better curricular and pedagogical arrangements, including compulsory internship as part of the training. I did a survey in Delhi of engineering graduates. I found very clearly that even close to 40% of the total students who passed engineering education, they said that they are not even done a single internship in the entire course. That is the data I found. They have not done any internship in the entire course. They have. I also asked, have you done any research work with the faculty? That I think close to 50% are saying they have not done any research work with the faculty. They are not engaged with any research projects. They have not done any industry visits. They have not gone for any internship. Many students, particularly students from private engineering institutions, but they have got the degree. So that's the kind of teaching learning, or the kind of procedure that we follow, the assessment procedure that we follow, that leads to offering of a degree. And that's one of the reasons that we see the declining quality of engineering education in the country, which is again leading to a crisis in the job market. As I have said earlier, in the changing labor market situations, because labor market situations is changing, I emphasize the idea of World Development Report 2019 that clearly emphasizes the labor market today is not the labor market tomorrow, that is changing very rapidly. So in that context, apart from having a good conceptual understanding of basic science and mathematics that we do in engineering education, also the technical subjects, engineering students also need to develop generic skills such as creative and critical thinking. That means multidisciplinary approach, problem solving abilities, decision making, and all that is actually required in the system. And in many developed countries, they are doing that, and they are successful in labor market. But the question that I am trying to raise, is our assessment considering these? We are focusing on assessment, but the kind of assessment that we do, is it focusing on these skills? The study again I did in Delhi, engineering graduates, that shows that the assessment is largely again on end-term examinations. Again, even if it is a practical-oriented discipline, the engineering education, still we go for end-term exam and all that we do in paperwork, that we do in other social science disciplines. Same thing we follow in engineering as well. There, we don't find many changes in that, and that actually is leading to the crisis that we see today in engineering education. Only 2.5% of Indian engineers possesses the skills in artificial intelligence. That is an important skill that we need. That is the survey of Aspiring Minds 2019 that says 1.5% to 4.5% of engineers possesses the necessary skills in data engineering, and only 2.8% to 5.3% are qualified in wireless technologies. That is an important technology that is being used in today's context that industry requires. You see the share, very less. I don't think many engineering institutions are offering such courses which will give them skill in artificial intelligence, in data engineering, big data management, and also other new skills that are required in the labor market. There we also fail drastically in provisioning of it. So the kind of engineering education that we give the traditional way, that is actually not helping the students to get a job in the labor market. That we need to think, and it is a thinking that should happen both at the macro level, let's say in the Aicte, even in the MHRD and all, also at the institutional level. The institution should propose something new to the Aicte, for example, which may be very innovative. That's the kind of thing that I want to say. Teaching and assessment in engineering education, what I found from the field survey that I just mentioned, I want to do elaborately. I did a survey of 1178 engineering institutions in Delhi. My central question was what kind of teaching and evaluation methods were practiced in engineering program and to what extent. That was my central question. I found that lecture method is still dominant in the teaching learning of engineering institutions compared to technical demonstration and laboratory work. We expect that technical demonstration and laboratory work is required in the engineering discipline, but still that is not in the forefront. That is again in a sideline in the teaching learning process. Around half of the engineering students, I already said, have reported that they have never gone through any field work or industrial visit during their entire program of study. You see this kind of situation that we see in the engineering institutions in the country. Majority of students, it's as high as 93% reported that an end of course examination is used as part of evaluation process. But that is again pen and paper, not much innovative strategies to evaluate. Like their technical skills, practical skills and all that were not being used that frequently. Rather question and answer like pen and paper work. Student involvement in activities other than classroom teaching, which will help them in critical thinking, which will help them for generic skills and other different skills, that is not being emphasized in the teaching learning. For example, research projects, engineering internships is significantly less. Though the scope for this is higher in government institutions compared to private, but still it's not very high even in government, and private it is very low of research projects and going for engineering internships. These are the core aspects of assessment and all that needs to be emphasized. My last slide. No, my last part one. Yeah, last part one, I would say that I will emphasize some policy dimension to it. We have NEP 2020 now, you all be knowing, and there is a clear focus on higher education in that. Does it offer anything new? That needs to be understood very critically. Though now implementation stage will come in, implementation plan is going on. So given that, let us understand what it offers. Need for closer collaboration between industry and institutions, that is being said, emphasized in the NEP 2020 in the engineering and technical education. But what are the pathways? Still, we are waiting how they are going to do that. That is being emphasized in several other reports, documents, even Knowledge Commission and several other documents. They have clearly said, Rao Committee report on technical education and several other reports. They have said that this is the case. But we failed that drastically. But what are the different pathways that we are going to do? That is still awaited. Eroding the silos between technical education and other disciplines. That there is a gap that exists between social science and engineering that needs to be gone away, and there should be a close interaction between engineering and other social science disciplines. That is all said before. I said in IITs, even humanities and social science departments have come out. But where are we failing? Even in IITs, NITs, those are not being integrated clearly. Where are we failing? That is another important question that we need to say. I don't find a clear direction in this in the policy document. Integrating science and technology with the changing socio-economic and environmental context that I said, are institutions ready for this? Because there should be an institutional readiness. I would emphasize, I want to underline this point, institutional readiness to adopt several policies. But are we going in that direction, that whether institutions are ready for implementing such recommendations? That we are not saying much on this. And having your experience in different institutions, I would be really happy to listen from all of you of your experience on this. Preparing professionals, particularly in the faculty engineering faculty and other stakeholders in cutting-edge areas such as artificial intelligence, 3D machining, genomic studies, big data analysis. But do we have institutional base? Again, I say, because imparting a new discipline will need new infrastructure, new faculty, new laboratory, lab facilities and all that. Do we have such things in the institutional level that we are trying to? If not, how we are going to strengthen the institutions? That is another important issue that we need to understand. Creating internship opportunities for students, which we have failed for long. Internship we say, but how do we go for internship? As my study said, so close to half of the students have never gone for any internship, but they have completed engineering. And again, if we are doing internship, it's not about only, it's not the issue with institution. There should be a close linkage with industry. Industry should also come out very clearly in providing internships or providing internship facilities to the students, which is not happening. My last slide. We know the problems very often. We have discussed that, including assessment, pedagogical curriculum problems, the macro problems, micro problems, teaching, learning, quality of faculty and all that. But what next? How we are going to address that? That is an important concern that we should highlight. These are very suggestive and need to be discussed critically. It's not a final point from my side, but let us still listen. in engineering education in the country is at a crossroad. Crisis, crossroad, whatever you say, engineering education has gone a drastic change, and that needs to be understood from different perspectives. A fresh approach is required in its expansion and delivery. I see that a fresh approach, including regulatory approach, is needed in its expansion and delivery, which is not common. AICTE should take a big role in this, in reshaping the engineering education in the country. How to reshape and all that, there should be a clear debate on this. I think VIT, I would request VIT should organize and talk, or even at least a short program on the innovative strategies that engineering institutions should adopt for the quality improvement, or a fresh approach, or reimagining engineering education in the country. That kind of reimagining of engineering education, because that will help us to bring out several innovative strategies that can be recommended to AICTE and other regulatory bodies to bring in such approaches. Because now NEP 2020 is happening, and in that context, NEP 2020 and technical, linking NEP 2020 and technical education, a different set of arguments, a different set of understanding should emerge from the discourse. I request VIT should come out to a different program, maybe in a virtual platform on this. Actually, that would be really the need of the hour, I find. From my understanding, I see that how to integrate NEP with technical education, and what are the issues, the crises that we see, and how we'll reshape the engineering education in the country. That is actually a debate that we need to do. This is a kind request from my side to the organizer. Important to reflect on the changing dynamics of engineering education. It's very important to reflect what are the dynamics, the new dynamics that is happening in the engineering education in the country, specifically the quality concerns and the assessment techniques. Quality concern and assessment techniques are two important platforms that we need more debate. Bringing students from the periphery to the center of assessment. Actually, in the current time, we do the assessment, but in the assessment procedure, in the assessment, I would say procedure, students are not coming into the center. They are still in the periphery. So we should bring the students into the center, and then we should think of a fresh approach to the assessment. That is my submission. How to do that? Again, a separate debate is required on this. Maybe if a VIT organizes such an event, then that there will be a separate debate on this. Establishing a strong synergy between industry and institution, which is still lacking. Involving industries for teaching learning, I would recommend institutions should call for industry very closely, and they should meet industry regularly, industry persons, and they should involve industry persons in the classroom teaching even. Classroom teaching even, I want to underline. Classroom teaching even, if they are agreeing to that, and assessment in engineering education. Both in teaching and assessment, they should be involved. When I say teaching and assessment, I also include curriculum, in preparation of curriculum and all that. Because without industry linkage, or without a better synergy with industry, I don't think we are getting into a better engineering education, imparting a better or quality engineering education in the country. That is we are lacking for long, and that needs to be bridged. Understanding the classroom diversity and thereby redesigning the assessment strategy. This is an important point for teachers, at least. For teachers and the leadership in the engineering institutions, for the leaders, let's say the principals and the head of the institutions, the classroom composition is changing. The classroom in engineering education, where the BTech program, let's say 10 years back, is not the classroom today. The classroom is highly diversified. That is being highly heterogeneous. So given that, how we are addressing the students' concerns in a heterogeneous classroom is an important concern. So what I recommend, my suggestion would be, we should, as a teacher, when we are entering into the classroom, we should clearly understand the concerns of the students very clearly, because now the student composition is different. Maybe one example I can give in this context: earlier there were less female students in engineering. Now it has increased. You can see more female students in the engineering classroom. So that a new composition that we are finding. So our approach should be different. The other important thing that we see that in the earlier stages, we might not have students from low-income profiles to households, but now we are getting students from poor and low-income households. They might have language barriers. They might have several other technical problems. So that we need to, they might have a different understanding level. So those things should be understood very clearly, because the student composition is changing very clearly. Even the expectation from the course is changing by the students, given the labor market expectations or the changes in the labor market. So that needs to be understood at the institutional level at least. And that should be incorporated in the curriculum and pedagogy and in the classroom teaching learning. I think that we all teachers here should think very critically this. Who all are the students who are sitting in front of us? Maybe in virtual mode or otherwise in the classroom. That understanding will really make a significant change in the teaching learning procedures and also in the assessment. New normal online teaching assessment and all that I said, but that is not, it's not about only giving a laptop, internet and all, whether students are getting the kind of teaching that we do in online and teaching and assessment that we are doing very, what we call, seriously in this COVID-19 pandemic, that also needs to be thought. There are several examples where teaching learning procedure that we follow through online mode is failing. So that also another important challenge, new challenge that we get, a new set of challenge, and that we need to understand very clearly. Even the students from rural areas, students having not access to internet, proper internet access, or gadgets and all, what kind of problem they are facing. Even if students having internet and gadgets, they face different kind of problems. Because when we say that online teaching learning, we are not saying that online teaching learning is all about what we say and they receive. And the issue is more serious in the disciplines like engineering, where the practical skills are required, like they need to sit in the labs. So given that how we are trying to handle the situation, that is another interesting point that needs to be understood. Because I don't see the teaching learning through online mode is a very sophisticated or even a useful tool for the disciplines like engineering. Even I say that for social science disciplines. Because when I say the students, particularly the students from first generation learners, like the parents the students whose parents are illiterate or they are not highly educated, their parents, or they belong to lower socioeconomic backgrounds, they come for campuses, not only for classroom teaching, they also interact with peers and they learn a lot from interaction with the parents, peers, interaction with teachers physically, sitting together in the dhabas, sitting together in canteens, and that gives different learning opportunities for them, which they are missing. And it's not about only teaching the opportunities, they also get benefits out of that in the labor market because their communication skills, their expression skills, that improves because they interact with peers. That they are losing in online mode. That also needs to be thought while you are going for online teaching learning. As I'm saying, I'm emphasizing these points on teachers when we are teaching. So that needs to be understood very carefully. We have an array of hopes from NEP 2020, next 20 years to shape the future of higher and technical education in the country. We have several hopes from that, but how it is going to be adopted is a critical question. Still, we need to see the implementation strategies, then we can comment on that. I hope I made some points on engineering education in the country in today's lecture, and hope it might have benefited all of you, but I will really be happy to respond some of your concerns if it is there. Rather, I would be happy to listen. Instead of responding, I would be happy to listen your experiences in engineering education in the classroom or engineering education in the country as a whole, or the kind of crisis that I elaborated, or some of the hunches or reasons that I shared in some of the explanations, which might be wrong from my side because that is my understanding on the literature and also my field experience that I gathered from the primary survey and all that. But your on-site experience, your immediate experiences that we get from the classrooms will be really helpful for my research. Thank you again, the organizer, VIT, Basim, and other organizers who provided me, Taliban sir and others who provided me an excellent opportunity to interact with the participants in the almost as I said, it's first of New Year 2021. I again wish all you a happy New Year and be safe, be healthy. Thank you so much. Now my lecture is over. So over to Basim, our organizer.
Thank you, sir.